Hello there everyone, welcome to the channel if you're new, welcome back if you aren't. I am EDJ and we are continuing with the Napoleon's Marshal series with part 5 of Napoleon's, Marshals, and now we're getting to the real big boys of the series, we're getting to the best of the best, and I'll save my comments for after each Marshal is introduced. I don't want to talk too much before, and yeah, that's really all I have to say. If you want to watch this video without me pausing to talk or just having my face here in the... in the corner, the link will be down in the description down below of this original video. With that said, without any further ado, let's get right to it. Let's watch Napoleon's Marshals, Part 5.
6. Marshal Suchet.
If I had two marshals like Suchet, I would not only have conquered Spain, but kept it. I agree.
Louis Gabriel Suchet was born in Lyon, the son of a prosperous silk merchant. Plans to join the family business were derailed by the French Revolution. Suchet, an ardent Republican, joined the cavalry of the Lyon National Guard. In 1793, he was elected to lead a volunteer battalion, and at the Siege of Toulon distinguished himself by helping to capture the British commander, General O'Hara. He also made friends with a young Major Bonaparte. Suchet went on to serve under Napoleon in his first brilliant campaign in Italy, fighting at Lodi, Castiglione and Bassano. Transferred to Massena's division, he led his battalion with distinction at Arcole and Rivoli, was wounded twice, and promoted colonel. It was in Italy that Suchet learned the most valuable lesson of his career. For troops to be effective, they must be properly paid, clothed, and fed, something the French Republic consistently failed to achieve. Despite proving himself to be an excellent organizer and dependable in battle, Suchet never quite made it into General Bonaparte's inner circle. He went on to serve as a highly effective chief of staff to General Brune, and then to Massena in Switzerland, and was with Joubert in Italy, who died in his arms at the Battle of Novi. Suchet was promoted to General of Division, and in 1800 he was given command of the Army of Italy's left wing. With Massena besieged by the Austrians in Genoa, the defence of southern France fell on his shoulders. In a brilliant independent campaign, he held the Austrians near Nice, then chased them back into Italy, taking 15,000 prisoners.
Dang.
Despite this impressive record, Suchet was not on the list of marshals created by Napoleon in 1804. Worse, in 1805, he was effectively demoted, being given command of a division in Marshal Lannes's 5th Corps. Nevertheless, it was a role he performed with great skill. His division distinguished itself at Ulm and Austerlitz, and the next year led the attack in Napoleon's crushing victory over the Prussians at Jena. The next year in Poland, his division saw hard fighting at Pultusk, but was then held back to defend Warsaw and missed the great battles of Eylau and Friedland. Napoleon heaped rewards on General Suchet, money, titles, but still no marshal's baton. In 1808, Suchet's division was sent to Spain, where he'd spend the next 6 years. His first role was to support the siege of Zaragoza. Then, on Marshal Lannes's recommendation, Napoleon gave him command of 3rd Corps and made him governor of Aragon. Suchet found his troops to be poorly supplied, ill-disciplined, and low in morale. Their first battle together against General Blake's Spanish army ended in a humiliating rout at Alcañiz. Suchet found the drummer who'd started the panic and had him shot in front of the entire corps. He then reorganized his troops and restored discipline and pride, with 2 quick victories over the Spanish. He also faced a guerrilla war in Aragon, a popular insurgency driven by hatred of the French invader. Suchet drew on French experience of fighting counter-revolutionary insurgents in the Vendée, and realized that it was only by winning over the civilian population that he'd be able to make progress. He made it his first priority to ensure his own men were properly paid and fed, something almost unheard of for French troops in Spain. He enforced discipline and made sure requisitioned supplies were paid for. He told his troops, "I will look after your well-being, and you, by your discipline, will give security to the inhabitants. You will make them, by your conduct, care for the government of King Joseph."
He got it in Spain. Like, I know I said in the past that Napoleon's marshals really struggled there, but I think Suchet just got it, you know?
Told the Spanish people, "My troops will not impede your harvests nor overcrowd your cities. They will live in the countryside, ready to protect you. Religion and clergy will be respected." Crucially, Suchet also promised protection from the many Spanish guerrilla bands who behaved no better than bandits.
Yeah, he's making an effort kind of like Napoleon did in, like, Egypt. You know, like the whole respect the fate, respect the people, try to win them over. And yeah, I think a lot of conduct from what I've heard about the French in Spain wasn't really the best, which made it easy for them to be villainized. But yeah, I think Suchet really just understood the assignment, and I think did really well.
His practical and humane approach won respect and brought results. The guerrillas could never be completely defeated, but Suchet made Aragon the safest and best-run region in occupied Spain. He extended French control of eastern Spain with a series of successful sieges at Lérida, Mequinenza, and Tortosa. In June 1811, he took Tarragona. For this victory, Napoleon finally awarded him his Marshal's Baton, the only one earned in Spain. Then he moved south. He defeated a larger Spanish force at Saguntum, then took the great city of Valencia, along with 18,000 prisoners and nearly 500 guns. Napoleon rewarded Suchet with the title Duke of Albufera. But the overall situation in Spain was deteriorating steadily. The partisans became better organized and supplied. The British Navy was able to land troops on the coast to make diversionary attacks, while Napoleon withdrew more and more units for his own campaigns in Russia and Germany. After King Joseph and Jourdan were defeated at Vitoria, Suchet had no option but to pull back towards the French frontier, leaving behind several well-supplied garrisons. On Napoleon's abdication, Suchet remained undefeated, still holding the French frontier.
Wow.
When Napoleon returned from exile, Suchet went to meet him in Paris. It was the first time they'd met in person in 8 years. "Marshal Suchet, you have grown greatly since we last saw one another," the Emperor told him. He entrusted Suchet with command of French forces in the south, an important independent command for which few men were better suited. Suchet dutifully kept France's enemies at bay until news arrived of Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo. Following the Second Bourbon Restoration, Suchet was dismissed and retired to his country estate, where he died in 1826. He was still held in such esteem in Aragon that a mass was held to pray for his soul in the Cathedral of Zaragoza. Suchet was a brilliant commander, widely regarded as the best administrator in Napoleon's army. He was also one of the few who thrived with the responsibility of independent command. He never had the opportunity to prove himself on the war's decisive battlegrounds. But when Napoleon, in exile on St. Helena, was asked to name his best general, he replied, "That is difficult to say, but it seems to me that it is Suchet.
Oh my gosh. So, yeah, Suchet I think is really underrated. I think, yeah, he probably should have been made a marshal much sooner, and probably given more responsibility. I would have loved to see if he had been more in charge of the Spanish campaign, like, you know, with King Joseph and how he would have fared against Wellington. You know, so accomplished, but I feel like he could have been so much more used, you know what I mean? I feel like there's a lot of potential that never got realized, but for what we saw, yeah, the man was just I dubbed him the MVP of Spain because he handled that situation so well, and considering the Spanish hated the French after the whole invasion, the fact that Suchet literally, they had a mass for him, I think speaks volumes. You know, I just think that, like, yeah, Suchet's arguably one of the more underrated marshals, but he's definitely up there. Like, I think him, you know, he could have done really well if, you know, he had been more present, or Napoleon had included him in, like, bigger battles, you know, but, you know, I guess Spain held him up, but, yeah, overall, I think he probably should have been made marshal sooner, and I think he's great, and he's kind of like in Davout in a sense, that they both thrive independently. So, and kind of like Davout, I kind of wish Davout had been given more presence in the final battles, like Leipzig and, you know, Waterloo, because I just think that, like, yeah, you know, like, guys like those two would help a lot because of their overall competence. So yeah, Suchet is super underrated. And, you know, learning about him has been really cool because I didn't know anything about him, you know, before the Spanish videos. So I'm really happy to really learn about this dude. And I really, really like him. I think he's one of the best. And I'm sad, you know, like, kind of like Epic History TV said, you know, he didn't have a chance to fully prove himself in the bigger, more decisive battles of the overall Napoleonic War. But I think if he had been there, and the whole Spanish situation probably, you know, wasn't brought up in the first place, I think Suchet could have been very beneficial at, like, bigger battles down the line. But yeah, I would argue that, like, yeah, maybe the Spanish campaign is just where he proved himself and his skill. Like, yeah, the man's just, I really like Suchet, man. I think he's great. Definitely one of my favorite marshals.
5. Marshal Ney.
Ney was priceless for his valor, his, obstinacy in retreat. He was good for leading 10,000 men, otherwise he was a true idiot. Oh, that's so mean. Poor Ney.
Marshal Ney was a cooper's son from Lorraine, a German-speaking region of France on the eastern frontier. His father wanted him to become a clerk, but the young Ney, impetuous and headstrong, joined a hussar regiment instead. He soon distinguished himself as a fine horseman and fencer, and was a senior sergeant by the time of the French Revolution. When war broke out, Ney was made an officer, and became aide-de-camp to General Lamarche. His reports describe Ney as active, brave, and a skilled tactician. Ney served in the Netherlands and on the Rhine, fighting at Valmy, Jemappes, and near Winden. He was seriously wounded once and captured once. Fellow officers nicknamed Ney the Indefatigable. His men preferred Le Rougeau, the ruddy or red-faced. The 30-year-old...
Yeah, I had heard that Ney had, like, reddish hair, so that's something to help remember and distinguish him by.
Ney was now a proven brigade commander, despite refusing promotion more than once, regarding himself as unqualified. In 1799, following glowing reports from General Bernadotte, he finally accepted the rank of General of Division. In 1800, Ney and his division played a major role in General Moreau's great victory over the Austrians at Hohenlinden. This brought him to the attention of France's new first consul, Napoleon Bonaparte, with whom he'd still never served. When they met in Paris, they warmed to each other. Napoleon entrusted Ney the delicate task of imposing his Act of Mediation on Switzerland, which he carried out with swift efficiency. The same year, Ney married Aglaé Louise Augier, a friend of Josephine's daughter, Hortense, now Napoleon's stepdaughter, drawing him closer to France's future imperial family. In 1804, Napoleon proclaimed a new empire, and Ney was made a marshal. The next year, he was leading 6th Corps to war against Austria. He was accompanied by Colonel Henri Jomini, a Swiss officer and military theorist. Ney had been quick to recognize his talent, giving him a job as his aide-de-camp and helping to publish his work. Jomini would win fame as one of the 19th century's great military thinkers, and served Ney well as his chief of staff on several campaigns. During the advance against the Austrians, Jomini encouraged Ney to ignore orders from Marshal Murat that would have allowed the enemy to escape. Their decision was vindicated when 6th Corps won a brilliant action at Elchingen that closed the trap on General Mack's forces at Ulm. Ney's corps missed the Battle of Austerlitz, but was in action against the Prussians the following year. There had already been signs that Ney's aggressive instinct, which made him a brilliant tactical leader, could also get him into trouble. At the Battle of Jena, Ney ignored his orders and charged straight at the Prussian lines, becoming cut.
I remember this video where he just goes full Leroy Jenkins and just charges in and needs to be bailed out. Oh man, you kind of do see some of the headstrong, I guess you could call it recklessness of Ney, but yeah, it kind of reminds me, it just reminds me of like that olden way of fighting, you know, like when we saw in the Alexander the Great videos where he just rushed in and you think, why are you rushing in? But it, you know, for the most part it worked out for Ney until the very end, but yeah.
His troops had to be rescued by Marshal Lannes' corps. A furious Napoleon remarked, "Ney knows less about soldiering than the last joined drummer boy." Ney was criticised again by Napoleon 3 months later, when his foraging raids into East Prussia appeared to provoke a Russian offensive. The winter manoeuvring culminated in the horrific Battle of Eylau, which Ney's corps reached only as darkness fell.
Never underestimate the power of kindness, but of course, no.
That summer, Bennigsen's Russian army launched a surprise attack, hoping to encircle and destroy Ney's 6th Corps near Gutstadt. Ney, outnumbered 4 to 1, conducted a brilliant fighting withdrawal and escaped the trap. A week later, Napoleon caught Bennigsen's army at Friedland. Ney led a crucial attack on the enemy. "That man is a lion," said Napoleon, watching his advance. 6th Corps' onslaught.
Man, I love Napoleon's, like, bipolar responses to Ney. One moment he's like, he's like praising him, and then the other moment he's calling him a straight up idiot. Oh man, I guess Ney really invoked a lot of strong mixed emotions in Napoleon in certain times, which is just funny.
Shattered the Russian left, leading to one of Napoleon's most decisive victories. For all his flaws, Ney had proved himself one of Napoleon's best tactical commanders, and was rewarded with the title Duke of Elchingen. In 1808, Ney commanded a corps during the invasion of Spain. He spent more than 2 years in the Iberian Peninsula, and like most of Napoleon's marshals, found it a bitter and frustrating experience. In 1810, he joined Marshal Massena for the invasion of Portugal, but deeply resented being placed under his command. He criticised every decision, helping to create a poisonous atmosphere at French headquarters. The French advance on Lisbon came to a halt at the lines of Torres Vedras. During the subsequent retreat, Ney again demonstrated his brilliant tactical skills, fighting a series of rearguard actions that kept Wellington's troops at bay. But Ney's fury at what he considered Massena's disastrous leadership boiled over into open insubordination. He was relieved of command and returned to France. But he did not remain in disgrace for long. Napoleon knew Ney's worth in battle, and that the army adored him. He'd been needed in Russia, and was recalled in 1812 with command of 3rd Corps. As the Grande Armée advanced deeper into Russia, Ney was always near the action, leading attacks at Krasny and at Smolensk, where he was wounded in the neck. Amid the slaughter of Borodino, Ney led his corps in attack after attack on the Russian earthworks. When they were finally taken, and he was told that Napoleon would not send in his reserves to follow up their hard-won gains, he exploded with anger. What business has the Emperor in the rear of the army? Since he will no longer make war himself, let him return to the Tuileries and leave us to be generals for him.
Dang, yeah, Ney, I like how, like, these videos are kind of putting more, I'm getting to kind of see these guys' personalities a little more than you would just the normal, you know, videos we saw where it's just the fighting. Yeah, Ney seems really, like, headstrong, and at times kind of, like, hot-headed, I guess. Like, yeah. Again, I think when we watched that video on that battle and Napoleon not sending in his reserves, even though, like, Murat and, like, you know, and so many of the marshals were begging him to, and even, like, him ignoring Davout's advice of flanking. I don't know, like I said, I was kind of a bit mixed on my feelings towards Napoleon, and if he should have, or if he shouldn't have. But yeah, that's quite a statement from Ney, man. Man, like, man, he's starting to beef with everyone, huh? First Massena, now freaking Napoleon, man. Oh, man.
It was typical of Ney's lack of restraint, but his blind faith in the Emperor did not survive Russia. Henceforth, he'd fight only for France. It was during the retreat from Moscow that Ney ensured his place among the legends of military history. Just 2 weeks into the retreat, the Russians routed Davout's rearguard at Vyazma, and Ney and 3rd Corps took over. Ney was not only an instinctive tactician and apparently immune to fear or fatigue, he could inspire or bully other men into superhuman feats of bravery and endurance. A French officer later recalled, "I can see him still at the spot where the fighting was hottest, speaking to the men, indicating to the generals what positions they should take up, animating all hearts with the confidence that flashed from his glances. He made an effect on me I don't know how to describe." At Krasny, when the rearguard got cut off from the rest of the army, Ney angrily rejected calls to surrender and led his men in an astonishing forced march across.
You know, when I came into this series, the whole Epic History TV Napoleon series, all I knew Ney for was his failed charge at Waterloo, being one of the biggest, like, mistakes, you know, that failed cavalry charge. He went in without much support, and just how disastrous it was. And that's, sadly, that failure, that mistake, you know, is a lot what I knew him for, and it seems like a lot what most people know him for. But really looking at his track record, I think my favorite Ney moment is this retreat in Russia, right here, where he essentially fights through the Russians to get back to Napoleon. I think that was the highlight, you know, in my opinion, the highlight of his entire, you know, like, military career, and it just showcased his bravery, his guts, and just, you know, that was like his moment. Like, everyone kind of has a moment, you know, and I feel like Ney's moment was here. And this is kind of what I like to remember him more now for, you know? And I really like it because I think he certainly earned the title Bravest of the Brave. And yeah, beyond deserving.
Across enemy territory, crossing the frozen Dnieper River at night, personally pulling men from the river when they fell through the ice. Surrounded by Cossacks and down to 800 fighting men, they formed square and kept moving. Ney was more than a hero to the army.
That's awesome.
He was its talisman. News of his escape caused rejoicing throughout the army. Napoleon himself remarked, "What a soldier! The army is full of brave men, but Marshal Ney is truly the bravest of the brave."
I agree.
Ney led the rearguard for the rest of the retreat, and according to legend, was the last man to cross the Niemen River into Poland. His leadership helped many thousands of soldiers to make it back alive. Ney was rewarded with the title Prince of the Moskva and continued to serve throughout 1813, though his relations with the Emperor, and Marshal Berthier in particular, were increasingly strained. At Lutzen, Ney was moved by the conduct of his young conscripts, who bore the brunt of Blücher's surprise attack, but fought back bravely, helping to win victory. Napoleon then entrusted Ney with command of 3 army corps, 84,000 men. But the plan for him to fall on the enemy's flank at Bautzen went awry. Badly drafted orders led to delay, and the coalition army was able to escape. Ney fought in the Emperor's great victory at Dresden, but 10 days later at Dennewitz, his limitations as an army commander were horribly exposed. Throwing himself into an attack, he lost control of the battle, and was badly beaten by Bernadotte's Army of the North. Ney was devastated by his defeat, but Napoleon kept him in command of his northern wing. At the gigantic 4-day Battle of Leipzig, he commanded the northern sector, holding the line until a shoulder wound on the last day forced his return to France. He rejoined the army in 1814 and fought in the defense of France, commanding the Young Guard, and personally leading a bayonet charge at the Battle of Montmirail. In April, Ney, outspoken as ever, was among the first to confront Napoleon with the reality of his position and force his abdication. Ney was feted by the restored Bourbon monarchy as France's greatest soldier, but he could not hide his contempt for the returning aristocrats who treated his family with disdain. When the king's niece reduced his wife to tears, Ney confronted her, shouting, "I and others were fighting for France, while you sat sipping tea in English gardens." In February 1850...
Man, the guy has no filter, and I love it. Man, he does not care who you are, man. He'll beef with you.
Napoleon escaped from exile on Elba and landed in France. Ney was horrified by the prospect of civil war, and promised the king that he'd bring Napoleon back to Paris in an iron cage.
Nah, you won't.
But he soon saw that the army was flocking to Napoleon's banner. When Napoleon appealed to him directly as the hero of Borodino, Ney made the fateful decision to cast in his lot with the Emperor once more. When Napoleon advanced into the Netherlands in June to take on Wellington and Blücher's armies, Ney commanded his left wing. But he made a string of blunders. Against Wellington's troops at Quatre Bras, he was too cautious when he held the advantage. 2 days later at Waterloo, Napoleon left much of the tactical handling of the battle to Marshal Ney. It was a mistake. On his own initiative, Ney launched a series of mass cavalry attacks too early, and failed to launch any coordinated attacks on Wellington's position until late in the day. He had 4 horses killed under him, and personally led the last doomed attack by the Imperial Guard. Ney's courage that day was awe-inspiring, but his decisions helped to cause the French defeat. In the aftermath, Ney spurned several chances to flee France, and was arrested for treason by the restored monarchy. A military court refused to pass sentence, so his case went to the Chamber of Peers. With the king's allies demanding that an example be made of Ney, the outcome of his trial was never in doubt. 5 of Ney's fellow marshals were among a large majority who voted for the death penalty. On the 7th of December 1815, he was marched into the Luxembourg Gardens in Paris. "Soldiers, when I give the order to fire, fire at the heart," he told the firing squad. "Wait for the order, it will be my last to you. I protest against my condemnation. I have fought 100 battles for France, and not one against her." Marshal Ney was among the most inspirational battlefield commanders in history. A born soldier and brilliant tactician, unless his fiery temperament got the better of him. He lacked the confidence for high command, but under the Emperor's supervision, he proved one of the Grande Armée's greatest combat leaders. 4.
Ney, he comes across like a true soldier, you know what I mean? Like, obviously beloved by the army, and, you know, he had his faults, especially when he was given more responsibility, but his bravery is beyond question. Like, he was made for like war. I feel like he was just made for that. And yeah, I get that. Very headstrong, outspoken, bold, a little like a little hard to get along with, at least from a lot of the upper. I think with the common soldier and anyone below him, no doubt loved him, but I feel like with more of his equals and superiors, he did not get that well. Like with Massena, Beffier, Napoleon, he definitely had issues with them, but I think he was really real and upfront and not one to filter himself, you know, like when those people, you know people who like speak without filter. I feel like that's kind of like a bit of Ney. And yeah, sadly, Ney accomplished so much, but I feel like the saddest thing is that his performance in Waterloo has really done a lot to kind of, you know, I guess it messed with a lot of his good deeds, and he has I think he has much more, he did a lot more good than wrong overall from his career, but I feel like that Waterloo campaign, he was definitely, I even said in the Waterloo video, I felt like something was up with Ney, because like, you know, before the whole Waterloo thing, not to say he was perfect, mind you, obviously there were hints that he's a bit too aggressive and forward, you know, like with the Russian campaign, but like, I don't know, there was something off with him in Waterloo, and unfortunately I feel like a lot of the bad mistakes and decisions he made has really affected his legacy. And, you know, that's like I said, I knew him mainly just for his screw-ups in Waterloo, to be frank. And, you know, obviously, I think he should still have been there, but, you know, I think I didn't mention this in my Waterloo video, but I was like, man, Napoleon should have brought his best. Like, he should have brought, like, you know, Davout and Suchet. And I know they were holding important positions elsewhere, but I feel like they needed to be with Napoleon on the main battlefields, you know. And Ney, you know, even get Murat in there. I think Murat was trying to get back with Napoleon. Napoleon rejected him. Completely fair, I get that, but you know, I just feel like Ney definitely was off at Waterloo, and apparently he made a lot of he planned a lot of the battle. I guess he had a big say in the strategic advancement of that battle, and yeah, I think I wouldn't say choked, but he definitely faltered during that time. You know, and it's unfortunate, like I said. I think it's just unfortunate that a man as brave, as accomplished as him his legacy has kind of been defined by those mistakes, and I'm a little sad about that, because learning about him, like, there's so much more to admire about him that I feel like usually gets overlooked because of Waterloo, you know? I don't know. I think this series, if anything, has made me appreciate Ney more and want to see him for more than just any mistakes he made. I don't know. With that said, let's move on to Soult.
Marshal Soult.
You know, I think by this time the list of my Napoleon Marshals is already out. That video, in which I basically share with all of you the list I've made throughout this series, how I defined and remembered each marshal. And yeah, Soult, I just know him as the looter, the greedy looter, because that seems to be what Epic History TV from this series has mainly brought up most about him, that defining trait. So it's funny to see this. I feel almost validated by I defined him like that.
Jean de Dieu Soult was from a small town in southern France and enlisted in the Régiment Royal, aged 16. He became a tough, capable sergeant, and in the build-up to the Revolutionary Wars, joined a new battalion of volunteers as their drill instructor. Soult's self-confidence and bearing meant he was soon made an officer. The unit went into action against the Prussians in 1793. In a brutal baptism of fire, half the battalion became casualties, though Soult's own conduct was praised. After a spell on the staff of General Hoche, he joined General Lefebvre's crack Vanguard division. Soult learned much from Lefebvre, a future fellow marshal, serving first as his chief of staff and later as his best brigade commander. Soult's rise from sergeant to brigadier general took less than 3 years. In the process, he won a reputation as an organized and decisive commander and brilliant tactician. He also began a bitter, long-lasting feud with another rising star, General Marshal Ney.
Ney, what is your problem? Why are you beefing with everyone? Oh man, Ney. Never change, Ney. Never change.
Hey. In 1799, Soult established himself as one of France's best divisional commanders, fighting under Masséna's command at the Battle of Zurich. He was then put in charge of 3 divisions to pursue General Suvorov through the Alps, proving his ability for high command. In his report to France's new first consul, Napoleon Bonaparte, Masséna wrote, "For judgment and courage, Soult has scarcely a superior." The next year, Soult and Masséna were besieged in Genoa. Soult led a series of daring raids on the Austrian lines, until he was shot in the knee and captured. He was robbed and spent days in agony in a filthy hospital, an episode that may explain Soult's later reluctance to lead from the front. On his return to Paris, Soult received a hero's welcome from Napoleon. His rewards included an honorary rank as Colonel General in the Consular Guard, plus command of troops assembled at Saint-Omer for Napoleon's planned invasion of England. Soult, the old drill instructor, imposed strict discipline and trained his men hard, earning the nickname Bras de Fer, Iron Arm. Even Napoleon wondered if he was being too severe, to which Soult replied, "Those that can't handle what I myself endure will be left behind in the depots. Those that can will be fit to conquer the world." In 1804,
Respect.
Napoleon proclaimed his new empire, and Soult received his Marshal's Baton. The next year, his impeccably drilled troops became 4th Corps, the largest corps of the Grande Armée, and marched east to take on the Third Coalition. That December at Austerlitz, Napoleon entrusted Soult's corps with the main attack on the enemy centre. As he issued his final orders to his marshals, the Emperor turned to Soult last and said, "As for you, Soult, I say only, act as you always do." 4th Corps' attack was the decisive blow of the battle, though its success owed much to Soult's exceptional divisional commanders, Saint-Cyr and Vandamme. With victory won, Napoleon acclaimed Soult the foremost maneuverer in Europe.
Officer, we need your help with a dire situation in the neutral zone. The Federation detained a Romulan
that Soult was now less inclined to expose himself to enemy fire, taking a more managerial approach to command, though his planning, organisation and tactical instinct remained superb. The next year, Soult's corps played an important role at the Battle of Jena, and in the pursuit of the defeated Prussian army that followed. In the brutal winter battle at Eylau, his troops held the centre of the line. Soult's relationship with Napoleon was excellent, and the Emperor frequently turned to him for advice, much to Marshal Berthier's annoyance. In 1808, Soult was ennobled as the Duke of Dalmatia, and later that year led a corps in Napoleon's invasion of Spain. When the Emperor returned to France, he entrusted the pursuit of the British army to Marshal Soult. The British nicknamed Soult the Duke of Damnation, and he harried them through the mountains of Galicia to La Coruña. But in battle, he could not break their lines, nor prevent their escape by sea. Soult then marched south and occupied Porto, where rumours began that he was considering crowning himself King of Portugal. Whether the rumours were serious or not, in May the British and Portuguese took Soult by surprise and drove him out of Portugal with heavy loss in men and supplies. This was the most ignominious chapter of Soult's mixed record in the peninsula. 5 years that saw sparks of brilliance, but also missed chances, shocking avarice, and a reluctance to cooperate with other commanders. Later in 1809, Soult replaced Marshal Jourdan as King Joseph's chief military advisor, and led French forces to a crushing victory over the Spanish at Ocaña. He then oversaw the French occupation of southern Spain. Appointed governor of Andalusia, Soult administered the region with cold efficiency from his headquarters at Seville, though avoiding harsh measures where possible. He lived in royal style and notoriously looted Spanish churches on such a scale that he soon amassed one of the great art collections in Europe, worth an estimated 1.5 million francs. He was increasingly aloof, and even his aides found him difficult to like. Soult's character is hard and above all egotistical, one wrote. He takes no more than a passing interest in those around him. In 1811, with Marshal Massena's army stalled outside Lisbon, Napoleon ordered Soult to give support. Like many of Napoleon's long-range interventions in Spain, the objectives were unrealistic. Yet Soult marched north with 20,000 men, capturing Badajoz, but withdrew.
You know, yeah, mainly from I mainly got from Soult was from the Spanish campaign. And yeah, he seems a bit mixed. Like, you know, Suchet was just dominating Spain, but Soult, he really was giving, I feel like he really was giving it his all, and he was working, I feel like most of Napoleon's marshals, were fighting an uphill battle, and like I said, I've never begrudged any of Napoleon's marshals how they, even like the ones who didn't do well, like Marmont and stuff in Spain, because Spain was not easy. Like, they had so much working against them. The civilian population, the information, Napoleon not being aware what's going on and giving orders late, you know, the combined forces of Portugal, Spain, and Britain. Just like, there's so much going wrong in Spain. But I feel like Soult is really trying, and like, I mean, obviously they are all trying. I'm not saying none of them were giving it their best or anything. But, yeah, you know, like, some didn't really adapt well, but I feel like Soult, yeah, it's a bit iffy, like, he fluctuates, I feel. But, yeah, overall, I feel like Soult, I have a lot of respect for him, and I see why he's up. I'm not gonna lie, at first I was a bit like, why is he so high up against other people? But I'm definitely seeing Soult, and I'm really starting to, like, really like this. I like how this series is really changing my perspective on a lot of these guys, and helping me really appreciate them more. Like, I feel like even the, I guess you could name the lowest ranking marshal is beyond accomplished. Like, all these men in warfare are so accomplished, and you know, I just like really like learning more about them and really starting to admire them and what they accomplished.
On receiving news of an enemy landing near Barossa. 2 months later, he marched north again to relieve Badajoz, now besieged by the enemy, and met Beresford's larger army en route at Albuera. Soult launched a flanking attack that threw the enemy into confusion, but he failed to follow up his advantage and left the tactical handling of the battle to others. Nor was he on the spot to inspire his troops, and his army suffered a bloody defeat. The next year, Wellington's victory at Salamanca forced Soult to abandon his palace in Seville and retreat to Valencia. Though that autumn, he had the satisfaction of reoccupying Madrid and pursuing Wellington's army back to the Portuguese frontier.
Feel confident your taxes are done right with TurboTax Live Experts.
In 1813, Napoleon summoned Soult to Germany, where he fought at Lutzen and supervised the main attack at Bautzen. But when news arrived of the calamitous French defeat at Vitoria, Napoleon sent Soult back to Spain to take charge. Soult inherited a demoralized, disorganized army. He quickly imposed order, turned it around, and attacked. It was an impressive feat, but his mostly young conscripts were up against experienced, well-led troops. 2 attempts to relieve the besieged garrison of San Sebastian failed. Soult began a fighting retreat through the Pyrenees Mountains back to France. Despite the limitations of his demoralized conscripts, he ensured Wellington's army had to fight every step of the way, counter-attacking whenever possible, and offering resistance till the end, even as Napoleon's empire began to collapse. The last battle of the campaign was fought at Toulouse, a bloody and unnecessary one, as Napoleon had abdicated 4 days earlier. Under the Bourbon Restoration, Soult became an unpopular Minister of War. Like Marshal Ney, he initially opposed Napoleon's return from exile, but saw which way the wind was blowing and rallied to the Emperor. Napoleon made several dubious appointments in 1815. One was to pick Soult as his new chief of staff, replacing Marshal Berthier.
Yeah, I think Bethier. I call him Bethier. I know that's not how it's pronounced, but yeah, I don't think he wanted to rejoin Napoleon, which was a huge blow because like he's very important. But yeah, the thing is, when he returned from exile, not a lot of Napoleon's marshals wanted to like work with him again. So yeah, Napoleon had to make appointments, obviously with what he had, and yeah.
Not only did this waste Soult's command abilities, since his new role was merely to implement Napoleon's orders, Soult also inherited a complex staff system of Berthier's own devising. Crucial errors resulted during the Waterloo campaign, with orders going astray and commanders unsure of their role. Soult's warning not to underestimate Wellington's army was dismissed by Napoleon. You think that because Wellington defeated you, he must be a great general. I tell you that he is a bad general, that the English are bad troops, and this will be over by lunchtime.
Famous last words. I'm joking. Oh man. You know, I always thought that Waterloo on paper kind of felt like it should have been a classic Napoleon victory, mainly from like the biggest benefit I think is when like Ney and Blucher were separated, and then Napoleon always thrived in separating his enemies, dividing them into manageable chunks, and eliminating them before moving on to the rest. And it's like Waterloo in a weird way, it was still really close. I think Wellington was really near the breaking point, even though so much blunders happened with the Waterloo campaign. I think, like, oddly enough, like, Napoleon still would have won had it not been for Blucher showing up and, you know, some mistakes like that. Like, I think Grouchy, you know, not succeeding with the Blucher and Prussian endeavor. And yeah, overall.
Following Napoleon's defeat, Soult lived in exile until 1819, then returned to France under a political amnesty. After the July Revolution, he served as a reforming Minister of War, and 3 times as President of the Council of Ministers, effectively France's Prime Minister. He also became the Grand Old Man of the French army, elevated to Commander-in-Chief with the exalted rank of Marshal General of France. Soult died aged 82 in the same town where he was born, known today as Saint-Amand-Soult. Soult's record as a marshal was mixed. A brilliant and intelligent organizer whose ability to deliver a master stroke or inspire his troops to victory waned with time. Yet he was one of the few marshals that Napoleon could trust with a large independent command, a quality he needed desperately, but found in short supply. Suchet, Ney, Soult. Join us for the final part of Napoleon's Marshals as we reveal our top 3, coming soon. Brand new to the epic history.
Oh, I love the anime. It looks so anime. Yes, the Napoleon anime. You know, that's what we need. We need a Napoleon anime. I feel like Murad would translate really well in like the anime style. Like make it like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. You know, that's how I would direct a Napoleon anime. My boy Davu. I just know that Davu's next, and I can't wait to just fanboy even more over Davu. Now I think about it, oh my gosh! Now I think about it, we're done, guys. Like next video is the end, and then it's like, man, this has been a journey, guys. It just hit on me. Like, wow. I'm gonna be a little sad. I won't get to fanboy over Davu much anymore, but yeah, I like Davu. He's like the real-life Stannis Baratheon for anyone who likes Game of Thrones. mainly the books. So I love this. I'm sorry.
TV store, Manga Marshals. We have 10 of the best available as mugs and stickers in the merch store now.
I think I've come to even like Epic History TV more. He knows what manga is. He says it like manga. Or am I saying it wrong? I always hear people say it's manga, but then again, I don't know. But either way, man, if this was his idea, I love you even more. This is genius. I think I might get a manga Marshal soon. I'm gonna get a Davu one. I want to get like a Davu one and like hang it on my wall. Be like for the best Marshal, you know?
Check the video description for a link. Thank you to all our Patreon supporters for...
Okay, yeah, we're done. But, yeah, you know, I've come to respect and really like Soult more. I mean, I guess this is just a personal thing. I wouldn't have ranked him so high. I probably would have put him a little lower, but, I definitely understand why he's higher. Soult I'm still iffy on, but then again, I'm not doubting him as a commander. Like, I know he is accomplished. I guess it's just personal preference. But overall, yeah, guys, I really love this. I really love this series, and I'm really sad because we're about to wrap it up next video. And, you know, let's top it up with the best, with, you know, Davu. With that said, I'll see you guys next time. Bye, everyone.